Hello everybody. Today we're going to talk about the single most overlooked event in your child's life. Okay, it's something that a lot of people, don't realize causes their child harm, and it really sets the stage for a lot of things to happen next. And so what I'm about to show you here is a video, and so um, if you can't handle it, just turn away and don't look, but I'd really like for you to watch this video so you can understand what I'm talking about. This video here is of a C-section. And so let's just sit back and watch here for a minute.
All right. Ears of a girl. Ears of a girl.
Make you cute for the camera.
Oh man, keep coming back.
There he goes.
All right.
Look at those big old testicles, though. Bottom of a boy. Bottom of a boy.
Yeah.
Well, he sure had a big head here.
Yeah, that was the problem. The head.
And so, I mean, that was, nothing scary, nothing, really hugely out of the normal. They did a great job of delivering the kid, and a lot of times, this is the way they have to bring him in. Even really, really natural births, you're going to see trauma. And I think if you guys all looked at it, you could see how much stress was placed into that baby's spine, into their neck, just the way they had to turn and get them out. And so, I mean, it's not really something you can avoid. It's something that happens in kids. And so when it does, when kids are born, you have to look at this, and it has to be addressed, or it can really lead up to a lot of serious things, a lot of illnesses in your kid's life. And we're going to talk about that coming up here. And it's something that happened to my son, a very normal, vaginal birth, and it went great, and it was really smooth, and still we had some trauma where his shoulders got a little stuck, and we saw the consequences of it, but we were able to fix it because we know the answer. And so we want to share these answers with you. Well, this is what happens in a lot of these kids. And so when they come out, when they get turned like that, and the force that comes with it, they'll literally get stuck in a position like this. You can see the normal one on the right there where it's aligned, and the misaligned one on the left. And you can see how if you turn and get stuck in this position, you can start to put a lot of pressure on the brainstem, on the nerves, and on those joints. And unless somebody does something to correct this, it's going to stay that way, and it's going to start to cause a lot of problems for this kid early in life and even later in life. And so the real pandemic, Dr. Gutman, MD, found that spinal injury was present in 80% of the infants he examined shortly after birth, which caused interference to the neurological and immune function. And so that's really important there, because neurologic, obviously, if something is causing neurological problems, you'll start to see neurological issues, nervous system issues. And so when you look at kids now, what are the big things going on? ADHD, autism, sensory disorders. And so even these injuries at birth can start to cause these problems. And then immune function, I mean, we're seeing sick kids all the time, more and more and more. And it's not just birth, but there's other things too that also enhance this. And he says it's 80%. I actually think it can be even higher than that, if you really want to look at it closely. And he concludes that observations of motor development and manual control of the occipital atlantoaxial joint, which is right between the first vertebrae in your neck and your skull. It should be obligatory that after every difficult birth, I think it should be after every birth, it should be examined. And furthermore, he says this occipital atlantoaxial joint complex should be examined, and if required, specifically adjusted. The success of the adjustment overshadows every other type of treatment. So he says the most important thing you can do after traumatic birth is have that kid adjusted. It's so huge, and we want everybody to know this. And so really I want you guys to understand chiropractic, because it's not just about sore backs. It really isn't. And that's kind of the way it goes. When you hear the word chiropractic, you think about sore backs, and there's so much more to it. And we're gonna show you that here. Dr. Bruce Lipton, a famous biologist, said the function of the nervous system is to perceive the environment and coordinate the behavior of other cells. So your nervous system takes in all the information you're getting, processes it, and then tells your body what to do. Okay? When this process is interrupted, you get sick. And so what Dr. Gutman had said on the slide before is that when you have birth trauma, the nervous system gets affected, and so that can affect the whole rest of the body. And so you can see here on the left here, I put a chart of just the areas that your body, how your nervous system controls things. Different areas of the spine will control different organs. And so as you go down, I mean, if you have trauma up there and you have a nervous system impeding subluxation, it can affect any of these things all the way down the chart. And so if it occurs at the top of the neck like that, it can literally affect anything lower, and that's why it's so important to be checked. Here on the right, I have showing your central nervous system. And basically what happens in these kids is they'll get stuck in what's called sympathetic mode or gas pedal, where they're just go, 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 go all the time. It creates a fight or flight response. And they have a really hard time engaging their parasympathetic nervous system, which is their brake pedal. It's what tells them to stop, rest, digest, grow, develop. And so those kids have a really hard time doing those things because their nervous system is not working right. And a lot of times it's because of the trauma of birth. Can it come, from falls and things along the way? Yeah, absolutely. But almost always one of the first things how a child is affected is through birth trauma. And so, when we say the word subluxation, what that means is when a vertebrae is out of alignment or a bone is out of alignment. And so there's really three causes we look at: physical stress, like a birth or a fall; chemical stresses, like eating bad food or being exposed to pesticides and so on; or emotional stresses. And we all have those in our life. And so we really have to decrease these as much as we can. And what happens next over here is we call them the 5 Ds. And I don't expect you to know what they are, but I'm just going to explain them to you a little bit here. Dyskinesia means when a vertebrae becomes stuck. Okay, it can't move. So after that trauma to the neck, those vertebrae end up stuck in one place and they don't move. And those joints have to be able to move, because when the joint moves, it sends a message to the brain telling it where it is in space, and it's called proprioception. If it's not moving, it sends something called nociception. You can just think of that kind of like static from a radio. So it's getting the wrong messages. And so when the brain gets these messages, it then tells the body to do something. And so disafferentation is the senses sensing where it is in space, and then dysautonomia is when the wrong messages are sent from the brain. So you get a stuck vertebrae, it sends a message to the brain, and then it has to send a message back to the organs telling them to do something. While if you're sending the wrong messages, the nociception, because a vertebrae is stuck, that means that the organs and the rest of the body is going to respond in the wrong way. Dys-ponesis, we're going to talk about here in a minute, and disconnected again in a minute. So I'm going to come back to those. But really what I really want you to get is when a vertebrae becomes stuck, it can't send the right messages to the brain. It sends the wrong ones. It sends noise, which then the brain doesn't like, and the brain will end up sending the wrong messages then to the rest of the body, and you'll get dysfunction in the body. And so just going back to this here again, so if we want to get these kids out of this gas pedal, this sympathetic, this go, 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 we have to get those vertebrae unstuck. Okay, they can't stay stuck. And so by the right adjustments, we can take that pressure off, the nervous system will respond right, and they'll be able to enter this parasympathetic mode so they can finally hit their brake pedal. Bruce Lipton, once again, he says you can't be in growth and protection at the same time. And so these kids who are go, 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 they're protecting themselves. They're in a fight or flight. They can't be growing at the same time. So it's really hard for them to develop the way they should with their brains, with their physical growth. And so it gets really, really hard on the body, and it really stresses them out. And then we all know it's frustrating. And so this is really key to getting these kids well. And so when I was in school, there was basically 2 rules. Don't call other kids names. And now, it seems like every single kid has some sort of a label, whether it be autism, ADHD, sensory, Asperger's, OCD, anxiety, bipolar, allergies. It was almost unheard of when I was in school, and now it's everywhere. Okay? And so the other one that we were told, obviously, don't do drugs. And now it's getting harder and harder and harder to find kids who aren't on one of these drugs for whatever reason. And so we really want to find the causes were physical, chemical, and emotional. And so the more we can get rid of these causes, the healthier these kids are going to be. And so what I want to do is get rid of this caused this birth trauma, and these kids are going to be a lot healthier. And so, right, there's a lot of things people are worried about: the flu, the swine flu pandemic. But really, if you look at the numbers, what should we be worried about? These are the huge things that are affecting our kids. Asthma, 1 in 10 kids, it's $50 billion in costs. ADHD, 1 in 9 kids now have it. Most common drug prescribed is in the same class as cocaine. Mental illness now affects 1 in 5 kids. And so while we're worried about swine flu and these things, this is really what's going on, and we got to start to get these kids well. And so going back to dys-ponesis, so when the thing I want to drive home here is that when these things happen, when these vertebrae do get stuck, when these kids get into these nervous system dysfunction and immune dysfunction, or they're sick or they're having sensory problems, it's actually very, very reversible. And they can heal and they can come out of it. And that's what dys-ponesis is. It's defined as a reversible physiological state consisting of unnoticed, misdirected neurophysiological reactions. And so basically what it's saying is you can heal the nervous system and you can start to send the right messages to the body. And so here's the picture again. One of the most common cause, in my opinion, is birth trauma. And there's not a lot you can do about it. These kids have to come out. And it's just a matter of getting checked once they do come out, okay? So one way that we really like to scan these kids, and you can see how their nervous system is functioning, is by doing a nerve scan on them. And it'll literally tell you how much their nerves are firing. And you can really focus in on the areas then too where they did have trauma, or the areas that they're having problems. So like this scan here you see on the left, this kid is probably going to be dealing with asthma. And maybe some ear infections as well. And the reason I say that is just because of where you can see the red. When you go through chiropractic care, almost always, not always, can't say always, but almost always, you'll see a huge change in these kids' nervous system, how they respond, how they feel, and how they act. And then we rescan them and you can see it, just like the one on the right here. Also do posture screens so that you can actually see where some of these traumas might be, and so you can actually find things like scoliosis, head tilts, where is the stress being put on the body, and these are great tools as well. I'd like to give you all an opportunity for watching this video. If you call or email us and mention this video, we'll give you a complimentary nervous system scan and posture screen so you can actually see if this is something that might be affecting your kid, okay? It's a huge problem. We know that people aren't finding it like they should, and we just want to help more people. So take the opportunity, get your kids checked.